All right, welcome back. I'm Bill Quinn, and I am so lucky to be joined again by Sheila Holm. Sheila, thank you for being with us. I am so excited for this next segment.
It's more of those 45 points.
It
so
is.
wanted to destroy us, and we were still being very kind to everyone.
And
we
we
were
are
so
going
kind.
we are going to out the bad guys plan, aren't we?
Yep.
All right. So today, as I understand it, we're going to talk about control of corporations, control of businesses, and then infiltration and control of unions. Is that right?
Yep, that's points 37 and 36. So if anyone has a book, pull it up, and you can pull up chapter 17. Isn't it fun to have a 17? The president's been wearing the yellow tie all week, guys, with all these major announcements, and so it's kind of fun to do a 17 chapter.
There's been all kinds of interesting observations this week. We can talk about those a little bit later, perhaps.
Awesome.
All right, let me turn it over to you. Where should we go first?
Okay, so on the corporations and businesses, we've been wondering how they do all of this and how they make all of this happen. Well, now you know about USAID, and you know how they do all of that. And the reason they have to control them is because they have to control what we eat, not only what we eat, what we think, how we do things, businesses that we want to support. They influence us with propaganda as to who the best businesses are. They destroy the businesses that a lot of them have tried to help us, and they destroy them. You've seen it in the medical industry. You've seen it in the food industry. You've seen it everywhere. And so that's where this starts, is you've got to control the corporations and making everything a corporation. It starts right there.
That's right, because corporations can do things and act in ways that, very frankly, people can't. And they have certain protections that people don't. So, all right, go right ahead.
Well, and then I used an example as you dive into chapter 17. I used an example 100 years before our 2008. Remember how horrible things were in 2008? And remember how they made decisions. This car dealership got to stay, but this one has to go.
Right. This bank gets bailed out. Those get to fail.
Yep. And then Chevy, we gave them all sorts of money, and then they go over to China and say how wonderful it is to have the relationship and partnership with them, and what a nice deal they negotiated, blah, blah, blah. And they just took all this money from America that we gave them and went over and made deals in other nations. So anyway, all that stuff was happening, and it's exactly what happened 100 years before. In 1907, what happened was Teddy Roosevelt was a president, and Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders were doing so much for us. And I mean, they used to just put the horses on the trains. I got to see his Rough Riders cabins up in North Dakota. It's in the Badlands in North Dakota. And they would just put all of their guys and all of their horses on a train and get to wherever they needed to be in this country. It was so amazing. And so to hear that history growing up was amazing. And having relatives in North Dakota, so we could use the excuse of traveling through the Badlands to get up to Northwest North Dakota, up by Montana and Canada. So in that time frame, I was really fascinated about him. And I think we used his, the man in the arena that's in the beginning of the book. We already used that. He was such a powerful describer of where we need to be. And because he said, it's you and me. We're the government. It's not the government's out there somewhere. The government's going to do something for you that's out over somewhere else. It's you and me. We're the government. Well, in 1907, he went on a deer hunt down in Louisiana, and he didn't catch any deer. And so they decided to go for duck, and they were really successful. And so it became instead of a deer hunt, it was a duck hunt. While he was gone, J.P. Morgan of J.P. Morgan Chase, Manhattan Bank. And you guys who have my book series, you know the whole thing about J.P. Morgan taking over the estate of a Kennedy when he was the Manhattan Bank president. And Chase Manhattan is now that bank. And so J.P. Morgan Chase Manhattan Bank is the whole thing now. Okay. And so what he did in 1907, he decided which banks remained solvent and which banks had to close. Now, since you've experienced 2008, you know that in some bigger areas, I know a guy in Iowa who owns 7 car dealerships, while all these other guys who own 1 or 2, all are gone. They couldn't keep their dealerships. and that's in 2008. It was the same thing back in 1907 with the banks. He decided, you get to remain and you have to go. So what that did, it took the whole centralized bank system, took deeper control of the entire banking system. And ever since that date, and that 1907 is 3 years before 1910, when they made the historic train trip going on Senator Aldrich. This is, you can look this up. It's in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Senator Aldrich and the guy, Woodrow Wilson, who was credited with Industrial Revolution in America. Okay. So they start up there and they get on Senator Aldrich's private car. This is how the trains used to run. And so the presidents always had a private car. Well, this was a Senator Aldrich who had a private car, put all these guys on there. They all traveled down to Georgia. And what do they tell the media? They tell the media, because they did a big press conference, that they were going on a duck hunt. Huh. That's what they were going to do. But instead, they met at the Millionaires Club in Jekyll Island. And what they did with that in 1910 was put all of this together. That's why I think it was in 1912 was the Titanic, right? And so that's when they took out John Jacob Astor and all the other wealthy men. John Jacob Astor was the wealthiest man in the world, and he wasn't going to let any of this happen. And the reason why I wanted to mention all this today is because so much is happening in the financial arena. So much is happening in all these other things that you can see. They weren't going to let us be able to do what we needed to do in this country. And so 100 years ago, when they took this control and they changed everything, and then Woodrow Wilson was honored becoming the president, then he was the president that took us into World War I. He got us in the Federal Reserve. He set up the IRS. All this is in our amendments in the Constitution. He did all of this immediately as soon as he became president. And nobody knew until his deathbed confession, when he said, "To save my family, I sacrificed my nation."
Wow.
So we didn't know until then, but all these guys were in the secret societies together. So they were all making these plans. In fact, someone sent me the original, a woman in Colorado sent me the original structuring in a book by a Kennedy who wrote the whole history and has the handwritten documents until there were typed documents. Put the handwritten documents with all the signatures and everything in the book about the Knights of Pythias. And this whole process of what they have put together and how they have structured these things goes way, 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 way back. In fact, the guy that structured it, I just got this book, and the way they structured it, Justice Rathbone wasn't brand new in DC in 1864. He was a member over in Boston before and had to come out of a relationship in that location to get involved in the location in DC. And guys, that's why Kash Patel moved everybody out of the FBI building and moved them over to the Reagan building. Because that move is everything the president has been focused on, getting the FBI somewhere else. They kept wanting us to pay to remodel that building, but I hope they tear it down, because anyway, I hope they just tear it down.
Bad ground, isn't it?
Is absolutely bad ground. So what I'm sharing in this about controlling and corporations and all the big business, and think about all the small businesses, and why is America at this late date in history still losing 9 out of 10 new businesses fail in the first year? And now SBA, they did this with me back in the 80s. You had to put up your home equity as part of the business loan, in addition to all your collateral. Mm-hmm. I was 5 times collateralized when they did their hostile takeover of my corporation. They just kept taking everything. There's nothing left. They took all the assets. They took all the equipment. They took all the accounts receivable. They took everything else, and then still wanted 3 times the amount of the SBA loan at trial 2 years later. So the equity in your home is tied up to it. So what happens is when your business fails, you also lose your home.
Oh, goodness. And I remember the people have talked about, the first and second year, the tough times for a business, but it didn't always used to be that way, did it? It was this is a created situation, as you described. Many people can start a business, and it can succeed rather quickly. It doesn't have to fail, and you don't have to have this massive percentage of businesses failing.
Well, and
It's
then the ones that do get successful, then what do? They come in with big money saying that they can take this over. The person gets so excited that they can get relieved of it because they can see when someone has developed something that they're interested in, and they have the funding through US aid, et cetera, to come in and buy what you just developed. And so you end up with that money, but they end up with your business. And that's how they've merged, that there's only 6 companies in the whole food industry. There's only like 3 top ones in the whole pharmaceutical industry. I mean, it's just, they're just narrowing and narrowing down to putting fewer and fewer people controlling more and more.
same thing in media, if I recall, up until about 2020. I don't know where we stand today. But when it was nothing but, television and radio and so forth, the vast majority was owned by 6 companies at the very top. And same model you're describing.
Well, and this goes on, and then it breaks your heart. I don't know if you guys know about a program called Shark Tank, but I kind of liked it because you can tell who can do a proposal and who can't. And I'll never forget, there was this amazing guy. And if you're out there and you're listening, he was in South Carolina. He wanted to create jobs in his own community. And the big bucks guy, I don't know his name, but he's the one that sat in the middle, and he goes by another nickname, and I'm not thinking of it right now. But anyway, he said, well, I'll do this and this and this with you, but we're going to manufacture this in China. We're not going to manufacture it here because it doesn't make sense, because you can't make as much money as you can in doing it in China. And because they were going to do it in China, the guy reneged on the whole deal, because he was doing this to get his community built back up. But look at how we lost manufacturing. So I put the example in the book so you can see how it's been layer upon layer. And I called the producer because he was the same producer for The Apprentice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he married Roma Downey. And I know Roma Downey because she went to the same location to gather in fellowship as several friends in Los Angeles. And so I tried every angle to get a hold of him, to get him interested in this, because I said you could really make a big splash for your Shark Tank program if you guys would do that and rebuild a community, because you allowed that guy to have his business there because he knew how to do it. He knew they could do it. They don't need this fancy, manufacturing contract over in China. And he wanted everything to be local. And nobody on Shark Tank was interested in doing any of it because they're making so much money off of taking the ideas and having them developed in China. And that's where Shark Tank went. It was just by being a business owner and having gone through what I went through, it was so hard to witness all of this. And that's what I mean. People go, how do you know all these things? And all I can tell you guys is I lived it. And I had no idea any of this was going to matter. Now, my dad said this. The last conversation we had was just a few days before he passed, and I had been to a cousin's wedding. I got ready to leave, and Mom had already put Dad to rest, and he had a hospital bed. We put it right next to Mom's side of the bed so they could stay connected together. And so I went in and pushed the hospital bed out, and I said, I need my hug, because he was not so good in memory the last few years of short-term things. Yeah. Well, he described my entire life, and then he took me by the wrist and he said, all of these horrible things that have been so horrible in your life, you think they're never, ever going to matter, but soon, very soon, you're going to realize just how much it matters. And that entire half-hour conversation was straight from the Father in heaven, because my dad, I never bothered him with how horrible it was for me, because I didn't want him to go through that. Because he had always said, there's not been a day in your life I've not been proud of you. And I'm like, yeah, but these ID changes, and I was telling him my problems then, and I didn't want to upset him anymore, because I wanted him to have great memories, and he wouldn't remember. It would upset him, but he wouldn't remember why he was so upset, because of the early stage on dementia. So, but he knew. And I never knew any of this was ever going to be important to people to know, because I thought it was my own trauma drama. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to talk about it. So I didn't mention it to anybody or involve anybody in it. And so this has been a real experience for me in the book series, let alone getting to this book. Yeah. But in those examples, I was explaining that how we, the people, can do better. Like every few lines, every few paragraphs, I just kept saying, we, the people, now that we know how they've destroyed us, even if we weren't destroyed by the same problems, fellow Americans have been destroyed. by the actions of these people. And because they've caused us to be so divided from each other, starting with the family, we haven't noticed what other people are going through or what would help them get beyond it. And so everybody goes through it alone. And that's exactly what the enemy wants out there,
Right.
where you're isolated and you got nobody helping you and you got nobody you can rely on, and you can't bother your family because everybody's without money. And so you can't ask for anything. You got it. But it didn't draw people to the Father. And the only thing that got me through this is because the Father never let go of me. He never let go of me. He never quit telling me what there. He was even telling me the strategic attacks and how they were doing it against me. When I go, you're not going to believe what happened today. And I just sit down, and I had this one chair in the house that I just really, really loved. And I put a special lamp by it, and I put a special end table by it. And I'm just sitting there, and I'm just saying, I don't. And as I'm saying that, he's telling me who's doing it. He's telling me what I can't see and what I can't hear. And that's what I want everyone to gain, because I keep saying he doesn't love me 1 ounce more than anybody else, but you've got to be tight with him, and you've got to want to be aligned with him. It's in the Lord's Prayer that his will be done. It doesn't matter what we think we can get through in the day or what we can accomplish, because when it's all said and done, he's the only one that knows the end from the beginning. And guys, everything I've been through, there is no way humanly possible. And I never asked, how long is this going to be? I never said, when am I going to have a roof over my head again? And it was 12 years. And people have been so upset when they're out of a situation for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and they're writing to me saying, I don't know how to do it. This is so horrible. And, if we focus on the problem, if we focus on the negative, if what comes out of us is not from the Father, you're going to stay in those same problems. As I've talked with people, I said, let's forgive all of this so you can be free. And the very next time we talk, they're talking about the same problem. If you stay in conversation about that problem is going to stay like a big cloud over your head. That's the only way I can picture it for you. They're going to stay right in the mess, and you're not going to get through it. And all I kept doing, and that's where I learned, quit asking God for this checklist I learned in the church, to tell God what you need, to tell God what you want, to tell God. So I had this whole list all the time. And every day I was in my prayer I was telling God how good he was doing for me. He doesn't work for me. And so I had a lot of repenting to do when I learned the truth. Because the only way to get out of this is to just thank him every day for showing you who you can bless, showing you, because if you start that blessing cycle in your family and in your community, and Father will tell you how much you can bless. It doesn't mean start handing money to people. It means see how you can be of assistance to people. And that's why the only undefiled religion, and this is in James, is to see to the fatherless. That's the widows, the single mothers, and their children who have orphans' hearts. And I've been preaching this the whole time. And they did this to make everything so huge that our little businesses they can't function. They can't make the money. So I'm trying to give you ways to flip this, because the only way to counter the negative plan against us is to be positive about exactly, Father, whatever you have for me today, whoever you can introduce me to today. And people go, how can I find a widow? And I said, just go to the grocery store and see who's having trouble figuring out if they can afford things. You'll meet them. God will reveal them to you. He'll tell you. I mean, I've been in stores and God will say, go over to aisle 3. And I used to question, and now I just say, okay, God, and I go to aisle 3, and then he'll show me where the person is that's having the trouble. And sometimes they just can't get things down and get the prices on them. And sometimes it's too tall for me too, but I can in an easier way, go get somebody to help. But if you start finding the people that are trying to find out the ingredients, or trying to find out the prices, or they're having trouble because they've got 3 other things in their cart they have to have, and they can't afford this one, that's what God is doing. He's revealing to you how to start that blessing cycle. And it's just small. Just like I said, I mean, all I'm getting is bills in the mail. I'm not getting anything positive. He said, what are you mailing that's positive? Just simple like that. And I'm like, you're prompting me to do what? And he said, send a note to somebody. So I started mailing a note, a positive note. And I hadn't written notes to people in ages. And now every event, you can talk to the people at Reawaken. Every event, I was handing notes out to people, telling them who they were in my life. handing them little, there's Belgian chocolate place in Augusta. So when I'm in and out of Augusta and going to events, I stop at that little place, get these little packages with, I think I did that when you guys came down to Florida last year, Bill, but that's what I do. And it's things that people will never forget. And then they'll start doing it for people. It'll grow. And that's because we've pulled back. This whole big cloud has come upon us. So you can't focus on the cloud. I'm going through some heavy stuff in these 2 points, 37 and 36. And when you see the matchup to what we went through with the symbols for the youth for civil unrest, because guys, that's what they're wanting. They're wanting us to go into civil unrest. They're trying to say nothing's happening in Chicago. I just got a notice today. You know, they found another 44 children in what they're doing in Memphis, Tennessee. And everybody thought they were just going in for crimes on the street. They'd found another 44 missing children. And you know what? I don't know if you guys follow Monkey Works, Monkey, WERX. Yep. He's been showing the intelligence balloons all across the United States. They're watching all of these guys and they know how to pinpoint them. And it's been this, people think, well, how are they doing it? They're just going to Memphis now. Guys, this whole plan to clean this up has been going on for decades.
Well, he also,
last time, didn't we, about military government?
We did. And I think Trump this week made a comment that kind of hinted to that they've had people in some of these cities for, I think he said months, up to 6 months. And they didn't make a big deal out of it. But as you say, they've been on this for quite some time. And he's already admitted that they've been there for, in some cases, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You unpack so many great things. There's been a number of things recently. David Clemens released a video where he talks about the nature of the spiritual war that we find ourselves in. You're talking about, you know, how folks can find ways to be more effective in listening to the Father's guidance and applying it in a day-to-day kind of way. That seems to be something that many people are waking up to. They're realizing, hey, you know, there's something more going on here. And I need to make sure I'm on the right side of it, and two, participating in the way that I'm supposed to be. And so I think the guidance is incredibly useful. It isn't always what we expect. It's often ways that we don't expect. I think sometimes people see things as coincidences when they may actually be more of a little message, you know. Oh gosh, I just heard from someone I thought of. Maybe I need to see what I can do to help them or help someone else that's associated with them. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's that's in essence the storehouse principle. That's what they did in ancient times. If they had excess, they left it out for the people who had nothing. And you'll know that you're in the cycle when somebody tells you this. Who is this God you serve who gives you to bless? They've never been around people who bless. Mm. You know, my first time ever in Australia, it was so miraculous because I had no way to go, and God arranged a way to go. Every step of the Australia trip was phenomenal, and I only knew 3 days before that I was going. And so I get there, and I only had enough to pay the first night of the hotel. And I only had that because God had me go to the post office and pick up a check, and I didn't have a bank account. And so I had to take the check to Australia and see if they would cash it. But I was already flying to Australia because God handled the flight. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm flying to Australia with a check from a business and who I helped with their business plan. And that check was going to just barely pay what they told me I would have to pay for the hotel room the night that I landed until they picked me up, the host family, et cetera, the next day. And so I fly there with this check. And so I tell the guy that's in the taxi, I said, no, I don't want to take your taxi. I don't even know where this hotel is. This is my first time in Australia. And I just want you to know, I don't know if I can afford you because I can't cash the check here. They want me to cash it at the hotel. And so I need to get to the hotel to see if they'll cash it. And he was hearing this whole story and he goes, how did you end up with a check that you don't know if you can cash it? He was trying to figure out. And I said, it's a God thing. Because God arranged the flight, and that was a God thing. And so now it's a God thing. And it seems to be about the amount for the hotel. But I don't want to do this if you aren't going to get paid. And so when I get to the hotel, they cash the check. I don't know that America dollar is 60 cents Australia. So I ended up with enough excess to pay him. And I had the exact amount to pay him again if he would come back and pick me up in the morning and take me back to the airport to meet the host people that were flying in. And so he said, I will do that. And I said, but sir, there isn't going to be anything left for a tip. And I said, I don't need a dinner because they give you free apples in the hotel. So I'm going to have an apple. And that'll be my dinner. But I don't have a way to tip you. And you know what he said to me? Don't spoil us in Australia. Don't turn us into America. I said, what do you mean? He said, we serve. And we're blessed to serve the people, to hear about their lives. And we contribute to each other in the conversation. And I get paid my job. And I'm helping my company. And so he said, it's a blessing thing. And so it's not something where you have to give me tips, because then we start deciding who we like and don't like because of tips. We bless each other because we're together. And I'm like, whoa, what a concept. So the next morning he came to he wouldn't even take the money for the next morning. So the next morning he came, I gave him the rest of the money. He took me to the airport, and then he stayed until they landed to make sure I was safe and okay. Because he wanted to meet these people.
Oh, really?
Who knew 3 days before that Sheila had no way to go to Australia. And he said, so the pastor I was sent to encourage up in Rancho Cucamonga. And I'm from Nebraska. And the only thing I remember is the TV shows that said bad people were in Rancho Cucamonga. And they said, how do you remember that? And I said, because what a strange name for a town.
Yeah.
So anyway, I got sent to Rancho Cucamonga, and the pastor knew that I was supposed to go. And so I prayed. And when I came back, I said, sir, he didn't say anything about Australia. And he said, what did he say? And I said, well, he said, didn't say anything about where you were going. All he said was Sydney. And that guy was talking about Newcastle. And so I said, God wasn't talking about that. He was talking about Sydney. Well, I didn't know anything about Sydney, Australia. And he said, well, that's where you have to land. And so what's your problem? I said, I don't have a way to get there. And so he said, well, what would it take? And I said, a flight. And so he said, well, then why don't you go get on one of the phones and call the airlines and tell them that God needs you there in 3 days. I said, are you kidding me? I mean, I had come a long way with the Father, but I'm supposed to go tell the airlines that they have to get me to Australia. And, that's exactly what happened. I got on the phone, and there were 9 times that they said, it's going to take a miracle for you to think that the airlines is going to take you to Australia. Ma'am, that's an expensive flight. And I said, well, God needs me there. It's in 3 days, and I'll sit in the jump seat. So then they put the supervisor on the phone. This is the 10th person. I said, I'll sit in the jump seat. She goes, oh, you've got a pilot's license. I said, no, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, well, you had to have the pilot's license to sit in the jump seat. I said, well, no, I can't do that, but I really need to get there in 3 days. And she said, just hold just a moment. She came back on the phone, and she goes, I'll tell you what we're going to do. I just talked to the people with Qantas, because it's American Airlines and they're in connection with Qantas. So what you're going to do, we're going to fly you to Hawaii, and then you're going to meet Qantas in Hawaii, and then you're going to be taken, blah, blah, blah. And I had to fly from San Diego to Los Angeles. So American Airlines was going to handle that. And then they said, we're going to introduce you to some of the Qantas people in LA, but we don't have a direct one to get you there in time, because I had to be there the next day. And so, and it's like, I don't know, 15 hours in the air or something like that. And so she's telling me all this stuff. She said, but this is what we're going to do. You're going to have to come into that lounge area where all the first class people, I guess, go. And I'd never been to something like that. She said, every one of us are going to be sitting there waiting to meet you, because we've never met anybody who is so sincere and knows that God needs them somewhere in 3 days, and that the airlines just needs to make it happen. And so they did the whole deal. My flight was completely covered by American and Qantas Airlines. Wow. But that's where the faith steps in. And every time, and look at the strength of my faith, every time I said, then they said, it's going to take a miracle. And I said, that's how my God operates. That's what's going to happen. And none of the employees could believe that this was going to happen. So now I'm going to come back to point 37 again. And in point 37, I tell you that, I spent months with the San Diego Business Development Center, because God after what happened to me, God was revealing to me that I could help all these businesses by telling them what's missing and how to make a decision on doing a business. So what I was supposed to do is everybody that came in for counseling, I was supposed to send them right over to go get a loan with SBA. That's not what was happening. A lot of the people had great ideas, but they hadn't talked it through or worked it through to the end. So I took on what God told me to do and told them, these are the problems you're going to have. And this isn't going to work this way. So think about these other options. And so they weren't all going and running out and getting an SBA loan. So when the director talked to me, he said, what's wrong with you? And I said, too many people want to get out of an employment situation and start a business, but they're not thinking about the whole stream of how to handle developing a business, structuring a business, having employees, meeting all the bills. Because here's what's wrong with our business administration to this day. And this is why they take over so many of our small businesses, is that the small business administration, you're not getting counseling from business owners who've been business owners and been to hell and back as a business owner and can help you with some real advice. They send you senior core of retired executives, and everything they advised me to do cost me more money and put me deeper into situations that I had to get myself right back out of. So, for example, they said, if you're going to file a tax return, you have to have a CPA accountant working with you. So they said I should hire a CPA, and then I should have one come in and work directly in the office and keep all the records. So I ended up paying $1,000 a week to that person, more than what I was even paying myself at the time. This is back in the 80s. And so I did that, and I went to pay their guy to do the taxes, and he wanted thousands and thousands of dollars to do the taxes after I paid this person to keep all the paperwork up. So I went to my bookkeeping company that does my taxes, and I said, what do we need to do here? He said, I'll do the same thing for $120.
Oh, wow.
I said, okay, thank you. And so getting the advice of the right people is what's important once you start doing all of these things. But I'm pointing these things out because there's so many opportunities, because Father puts us here to do these things to help people. And a lot of that is a business. And a lot of the businesses have been destroyed because we haven't stood with the businesses, worked with the businesses. I mean, in San Diego, this has gone on for at least 5 decades. They have had so many people. By the time I moved to San Diego, they had entire communities that spoke a different language. All the lettering on the buildings is their language. All the food, restaurants, everything is their food. They had changed the culture of San Diego to all of these different things. And this is before the fall of Iran. When they brought all the Shah's people here, they all said they were Persians, and they just took over California and all the businesses, and they had money, and where the Californians really didn't. And so they came in and they changed everything into their culture. And then that was after we had Vietnam fall, and all those people came in and have all their communities and their, I mean, just everything kept changing. And what we've never realized is what Eliezer Ben Yehuda, who God gave him the opportunity to update the Hebrew language, because he was dying, and the doctors told him he only had weeks or a few months to live. And so he said, Father, what do you want me to do? And he said, what I want you to do is update Hebrew modern so that people can understand it. That's what I want you to do. So he was working on that. While he was working on that, his wife passed away. And so his sister, the sister of his wife, her husband passed away. So what they do in the culture is you go take care of her so that she's taken care of. So he married his wife's sister, and I think he outlived her too. He got it all done. And so this is the difference. We all have something we're supposed to be doing. And because of this control that we're talking about today, and this is in chapter 17, points 37 and 36, and you're going to be shocked as we go into 36, because they take over all of this so that then they can come in, and when they take over these corporations and all of these businesses and all of this manufacturing that now we've lost most of it in America, what did they do? They put in unions. So once we didn't hold with the businesses that were here and help them stay in business, I mean, we lost everything. In California, we lost agriculture. My first trip to Europe was in the 80s. And when I went to Europe, all the avocados were from California and all the flowers were from California. And they were all in San Diego and Riverside County in Southern California. And they said they were Fallbrook. They said that they were Encinitas. That's what they said. And that flower company is still in business. They had to sell a lot of it to another business to stay in business. And that's been in the last decade. And the avocado business we lost to Mexico because that happened due to the when Ross Perot came in and they did that whole thing where we had to do this big trade deal, and it was with Canada and Mexico, and that has ruined all sorts of businesses. And when the flowers started coming in from Colombia to Walmart, and you could get a dozen flowers for $12, and our guys couldn't sell you a dozen long-stemmed roses for $12, we lost the flower industry, we lost the rose industry, we lost the avocado industry, we lost, it's not just manufacturing. So as you pray about it and you think about, Father, what can I do to start blessing people so we can start bringing these things back? We can start working on all of this. I mean, I'm working with a guy right now who's a fashion guy, and he developed a specific weaving option in cotton, and he's developed a specific one for stretchable fabrics. It's all natural fibers. Why? Did you know in the scriptures it says don't blend the fibers? And in America, we can't even import anything that isn't a blend. And this has all been done to us. So we lost our cotton mills. Most of them are pubs or condos or office buildings now. And I think we found one in South Carolina. And I think there's a possibility of quickly getting one back in North Carolina. I don't know if they're checking right now about Georgia, but otherwise all of them are gone. All of the paper mills are gone. All these big things are gone because we didn't keep the industries here. We didn't support the people being here. And it was what they did. And that's point 37 of the 45 points. And now we're going to go into point 36. And I hope you're sitting in a chair with arms on it because we're going to shock you today.
Let me make one comment before we move on, because you just mentioned paper. Just in the last month, they've announced that I believe an 1,100 person paper plant, long-standing, I think it's 80 or 90 years old, in southern Georgia near Savannah, is closing. And they are moving whatever they need from that plant over to Alabama. Now, why are they doing that? Unclear. But to your point, we're still losing these things. These things are still under pressure. And my understanding is there's actually an ancillary plant that is also going to close. I don't have the data on that one as we sit here, but the 1,100 person plant, imagine the families that are being impacted. They live right in that area. They've worked there, many of them almost all their lives, because it's the support, if you will, for this town outside Savannah. So this is still going on.
Yep.
Okay. You said you were, I think, going to move on to 36. So when you're ready.
Infiltrate and gain control of unions and more unions. So we kind of went through, remember when we did civil unrest, and we went through starting because of the Charlie Kirk, the new symbol that came out. Yes. If we can kind of scroll through that, I'm not going to spend a lot of time re-explaining it because we did that a week or two ago.
Bear with me. We'll get back and we'll scroll from the top, and you can stop me as we go through these. So here's the new one. This is a
brand new one. This is where they're calling President Trump and Charlie Kirk fascist. So the students that are believing in all of this don't even understand that anti-fascist is, they say they're against fascist, but it's the fascists that are distributing this and indoctrinating the youth to say these things. They don't realize what they're saying or doing because they flipped it on them. And so now we'll just give you some of the other ones. You see how it's all
right.
It's all the same thing.
These three arrows down and to the left are a very common symbol for some of these.
Now this is a socialism. This is from like the 1800s.
Wow.
And so it's all the same. The three pointing down.
And That's that again. And this underscores that particular symbol for Antifa is
Yeah,
a
Antifa.
contraction.
If you just stop at the A, it's Antifa. Antifa is anti-fascist. Anti-fascist and BLM had the same symbols in 2020 and 21, and they were out burning flags. You'll see the pictures of the burning flag in the book too. And people go, well, was this when they did this in Germany? I said, no, this is when they did it when they were rioting and tearing down our statues and etc. in 2020 and 21.
Okay, and then here's some new ones that you've brought forward.
Yeah, I didn't put these in the book because I didn't want to upset people. But as you see, you see the black fist is what BLM uses. It's a red fist with white that the communists use. And these same fists with the 3 points, do you see on the right? All of these are your school administrations, your teachers' unions. All of these are their associations and unions that you don't realize what their logos are, but they all match. Now, I think we have the fist ones next, don't we? Have the fist ones up? Well, this one is exactly in this chapter because the unions that we lost to manufacturing were AFL-CIO. And you see the Socialist Party, Workers of the World Unite, Congress of Industrial Organizations, and there's another one with AFL-CIO that says Workers of the World Unite. It's all about world order of them controlling who the slaves are and who's in control. All of this is about control. Everything we're talking about today is how they've been controlling us. And when you get more and more unions and bigger unions, you narrow down what you have to do with people because they're going to influence people. So they're doing it with the students for civil unrest. They're doing the same symbols in the school and the education systems with their unions. And so I wanted to show you the comparisons today before we go into the other chapters that are in between, because when we go into destroying the family, it's going to have to all be together. And this relates to all these same symbols we showed you when we went through student unrest. And I think, is it right after this where we have the red fist and the black fist and the?
I don't know that we have that one, but we can add it to the.
Oh, well, it's okay. We've shown it before. And if we go back to the teachers' unions, you can see those same fists. And you guys remember, it was just a black fist, exactly like that was BLM, Antifa. And it was a red fist with white, which now it's a white fist. But it's a teachers' union. It's an education association union. It's a Chelsea teachers union. All of these are exactly the same. Communism, fascism, socialism. But the 3 pencils, I had to include that one.
Isn't it funny that, it's obvious that when you look at them side by side, you realize these are the same thing. Why would they be using the same symbolism? But isn't it notable that people haven't spotted this on their own? There's something, sort of hidden about it that makes people perhaps not really realize, wait a minute, I've seen that before, and come up and say, wow,
we're not in the unions. The parents are not in the unions. And so the reason I'm sharing this is your educators are in the unions in the same belief system they're indoctrinating the children in for civil unrest. They're putting the youth, high school and college specifically, into these organizations. They're calling them fraternal organizations, same as the Masons, the Knights of Pythias, all the knighthood orders. They're all fraternal, charity, benevolent organizations, is what they tell you they are. But all of this is to control the masses. And none of this is new. All of this is centuries old. None of this is new. And this is why our founding fathers, and when Monroe put the Monroe Doctrine together, don't let this tyranny keep coming in, or we will have no liberty and freedom on this land. And that's why they had to take him out. But Monroe was the president, Jefferson and Adams, all three they took out because they were all fighting for our Constitution. And what has our president been supporting? Our Constitution. And he finally just acknowledged, in the recent things with Netanyahu, they finally called it the state of Israel, because it's the land that's called Israel. It's not the tribes of Israel. It's not the family lineage of Abraham that is calling themselves the state of Israel. It's a corporation out of England, the same that they did with us.
Well, I think that'll be probably one of our segments coming up, because there's so much to get into there. There's so many connections that I think are likely going to be seen as very important as we go forward. But we'll look forward to that in a future segment. All right, where would you like to go next with number 36?
Well, these are the symbols of number 36. And that's why I used to be a personnel director. In fact, at one point, and this is before my business book went into the Chamber of Commerce of the European Union. It's one of the required books for getting certification. And really? I was a human resources director, got a human resources management degree from Pepperdine. Just had to take a few classes because I already had qualification for other titles, but this one was human resources management is what my degree is in. And so that's how I saw these things happening, because when we switched over from personnel, and I was on the, they picked a few internationally, and it's when I was with Trust House Forte, Travelodge in San Diego bought Trust House Forte, and I was their director of personnel. And I became a member of the Council of Personnel Officers globally. And it was already happening in other countries where it went to human resources. And I didn't know that there was human resources personnel. I didn't realize once we fully went in America, human resources, what happened? Layoffs. The commitment to people, personnel, was gone. And when I noticed how it just kept changing and changing, that's why I started the Medical Legal Corporation, or went with doctors who did it. And then because they were going to be fraudulent with the attorneys and just give them the medical opinion they wanted, I started my own corporation. I wanted to make a change because the people need to work. And if they're injured, they have to work under the table to put food on the table. So when I watched all of this happening, that's why I went into the corporation, and that's what I was going to retire with, because we grew gangbusters. That's why they were so angry. But what the frustrating part is, we didn't notice the shift. All of these things on these 45 points, we didn't notice the shift. And so that's why at the end of the chapter of 36, I just give you a lot of questions. Do you know what happened with the teachers? What's happening with the Teamsters? What's happening with I remember a very interesting statement through a news channel. This is like 4 months ago. And I was still traveling across country, 140,000 miles the past year and a half. And wow. What I noticed is there's a company called JB Hunt, and they have a big yellow rectangle as their symbol. And then it's just the letters JB or John B. Hunt, whatever it is. And I saw those traveling the country. And then what they did, all of a sudden they got an announcement like on a Friday afternoon and said, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to ship by train. And I'm not kidding you. The very next trip across country, I'm along the train tracks through the central part of America. And you see them stacked 2 and 3 high, sometimes 4, just stacked up on train cars where you've got the 18-wheeler, what do they call them? The box trucks, the 18-wheeler containers. So the containers are stacked up. And here's the hunt. You see them layered. And what they did was just stop the guys driving on the road, put them on the train, and let the employees go. They just let them load them up and send them on the train. They only use people to drop it off or pick it up.
Huh. So, some companies refer to that as multimodal, where they'll take the same container and it goes from ship to train to truck, back to train, back to storage, wherever.
After, you know what they did in the Midwest? They had them remove their train tracks going to their elevators, had them remove their elevators. Huh. I mean, we could get into all the things that businesses have done to our country, because now the farmers in the Midwest, they're driving their own 18-wheeler trucks to get their stuff to market. And so, and I've known guys that take the corn and they end up taking the corn to the plants. And if they can't get the right price for it today, they've driven all the way. And I grew up in Nebraska, so I'm going to give you a Nebraska example. If there's 3 plants that they take it to, if they can't get the right price, they continue on down the road and go to Phoenix and sell it for corn chips. Because they'll make corn chips and they gave them a better price. And so look at what's going on in our country, but they're all doing what they can to survive. They're all doing what they can to get through. And we didn't observe or watch what happened. But here's this guy, the natural fibers guy. And I really trust that he's going to get it done, because he's created patents on special weaving. He's created, and now I've got him doing the 40,000-foot view to look at, okay, where can I get the cotton? Do we have enough cotton in America? Because we're shipping our cotton out and we're not getting cotton things back, and we're not getting natural fibers. And you guys look it up in scripture. It's in scripture that you do not blend fabrics. And the blended fabrics are also another tactic of depopulation. Please, guys, if you're working out at the gym, don't wear a polyester blend. Don't wear blended underwear. Don't do that when you're going to be in a heated situation, because that's when it activates and you won't be able to have children. I mean, it's just, there is stuff that we have not been on top of, stuff we have not known, because they've been in control. They've been in control of our businesses, in control of our banks, in control of our medical. We don't need all of this medical. We never needed this medical. People lived for hundreds of years in ancient times and didn't need this medical. We've got to bring things back to the truth, bring things back to the way we need to live in order to thrive and survive on this planet together, so that his will be done, his kingdom come.
Well, let's explore 2 of those points so people can go do their research. So one is, don't blend the fibers. One of the most beneficial fibers, as I recall, is linen. And linen is a very interesting fiber, but again, it's best and really should not be blended with other things. Cotton is very good, as you noted. And if you look up online, you'll find that this is documented. So that's piece 1. Piece 2 is, if you look at RFK Jr.'s work that's going on right now, he too has asked the very hard question: why is it that when people were growing up in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, even the 70s to some extent, we didn't have all these chronic illnesses that people have today? Why is that? What is it in our food, in our environment, in our lifestyle, whatever, that's causing this? Because clearly something's causing it. And so, I think those are the areas you're really concentrating on, yes?
Mm-hmm. And our president put in the most amazing Surgeon General. I just looked up the scriptures. I didn't look up, but I think her first name's Casey, the Surgeon General for the United States. And she's starting to talk about this. It's so powerful. But guys, if you look up, it's in Leviticus 19:19 and Deuteronomy 22:11. This rule is part of a broader set of laws intended to distinguish the cultures and maintain a sense of holiness. It prohibits mixing wool with linen in a garment, a prohibition found in Leviticus 19:19. And you'll also find reference in Deuteronomy 22:11. And so it's not just... you don't mix anything with cotton. Cotton is cotton. But this guy has created this way to spin cotton. I mean, you guys, it's creating industry with people who have the wisdom to do it. And it's so exciting now to have people say, I want to get America back. I want that to be my legacy. I want to bring this level of manufacturing back. I want my family name to be tied to this. We've got those kind of people pulling some major deals together to make this happen, because you not only have to have the cotton available to you, you have to have the location to handle the spinning of the cotton. You have to handle then the stitchery of the cotton and making it into things. I mean, I've met people in Central Georgia who are not that old, in their 50s, and they worked at Brook Brothers cotton shirts in Georgia. And it was something that was done, but all of this is left. Everything's left. They don't do any of that now. So prayer
it is. So you've referred to your books a number of times throughout our discussion today. I wanted to make sure people knew how to find more about you and more about your book. So let's share this if we can. Here's your website, hisbest.org. Take us through what they can expect to find here first, and then we'll move on to some of your books.
Well, we put the new interviews on. I had to change website administrators. And so your August 7th has still been on there, but I think this week we're going to put a new one on there. And so you've been on the whole time since August 7th.
Oh, goodness.
I had to make a change. There were too many issues popping up, and I wasn't getting the emails out to the people. And so that's now changed. There's a really great administrator on, and they know how to do the emails, and things are going to be happening, and they're going to get all the interviews up to date. But there's a scroll of interviews on the homepage, which you're on right now. And then there's also a scroll on the interviews page, and then the featured interview, the newest interview. We're trying to keep it so that when you hear about an interview or you want to know what the newest one is, it's going to be featured just like what you see on the front page now. This is a homepage. And on the homepage, that's a little story about me. It's about 5.5 minutes. And it was put together by Matt Struck, who did the one for the president. And it was just read truth.
Let's show the folks your books, and then we'll do a final. Here is the latest book, An Eternal Plan. We've done quite a bit of work on this, and this is when you talk about the various points, you're referring to the points listed in this book. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 35. The next one we did the FBI, or we did the first 20 pages of the FBI. It's a 60-page chapter. It's got a lot.
It's amazing. And there's the back page. And then, of course, the other series is one of the other series that you've done is Amazingly Successful for the Sake of America, volumes 1 through 5. And I believe you told me in the last segment there's another one coming. Yes.
Yeah, 6 and 7. We're going to be done. And then this 45 point came in, and it was too critical to get the 45 points handled and the information to the people. So I had set aside second edition Nation Restoration, and then the book series 6 and 7. So
that's great. That's great. All right. So where will we be going next, or do you know yet in our next segment?
Well, we can do one of two things. We can go into the breakdown of the family, and I'd like to add a surprise to that. Okay. Because in the breakdown of the family, the reason they've indoctrinated the youth is all the infiltration, and it's a brand new topic that's just everybody's just starting to talk about it. You mean they've had all these people here on student visas that are in their late teens and early 20s, and then they've all been here and they've never attended school, and they're still here 12, 13, 14, 15 years later, and they've got social security numbers. And we can do the Nation Restoration book with those points about breaking down the family, because that will show you how they infiltrated the people of the other cultures in with your youth. And by the handlers helping them, they got the jobs in your communities. So even your kids going to college couldn't get jobs to help with student loans.
Wow, that sounds fascinating.
I'll match up those two. It's my Nation Restoration book. And then we'll go through the points in between. So we did 43. We did the symbolism in 42. There's just a little bit left that we didn't do in 42. And then 41, 40, and 39, and 38 all relate to how to destroy the fabric of America by destroying everything about the family structure. So I don't want to spoil it. Those of you who have the book, go ahead and look at the chapter headings. The table of contents is 5 pages. And so you'll be able to see, I break it down for everybody. And that's why the table of contents is 5 pages. And so go down. We've already done all the way down into 43 and into 42. We need to finish out 42 and go through that and the destruction of the family. And the reason I did these unions today is because you'll see how it matches the student civil unrest. You want to know where they're getting their education about this? They're getting it in the businesses that have unions. And guys, there's telecommunications unions. There's healthcare unions. Doctors and nurses are in unions. All of these guys are in unions. I was only staying with going from the student civil unrest and matching it up with the teachers and where they go to work, so that you can see the indoctrination never ends. Yep. And then now we'll go back in and get those little points in between that show you to separate the children from the parents. They had to do that to do all this indoctrination, to tell them there's a whole different way to live to be successful in the world. And what did our parents tell us? Go out there and be successful in the world. We're behind you. You know, we're cheering you on. having no idea that all this was what they were sending us to.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking we should do those. And then this infiltration of all these youth that have come here with their culture and which is the tyranny that we're now experiencing. They helped support and bring it here. And they took away all the jobs of your kids because they weren't going to school here. They were just here on student visas, but they all had jobs. They all had places to live. They all were helped with these handlers and in all these college towns across America. So I think we should blend those together next time. Does that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay, let's do that.
All right. Sheila, thank you again very much. We just enjoy beyond words the time that we get to spend together. It brings so much clarity to so many things that many people haven't even get a clue about up until your discussions. And now they're learning things that they need to know as we go forward. So thank you for that.
Well, and bless you for going through all of this. A lot of people just want hot topics. And guys, these are the items that created the hot topics we're now talking about in this world, and what our president is going through, and why Kash Patel doesn't have many people he can depend upon, and how even the military went against the Constitution, and the bureaus, which are not part of our Constitution, including the FBI, went against the Constitution. How they are more beholden to how they were indoctrinated and what they're to do. And it's all in these 45 points. So I'm just so honored that you're making this available to the people, Bill. Thank you so much.
Once you understand the foundational changes they put in place, you can understand what's going on, and we can determine best how to change it to what it is supposed to be, as you say. So Thank you again. We will look forward to seeing you back in about 7 days.
Bless you.
Bless you in the meantime. Bye-bye.
I do ask every publisher, every editor, and every newsman in the nation to re-examine his own standards and to recognize the nature of our country's peril. In time of war, the government and the press have customarily joined in an effort based largely on self-discipline to prevent unauthorized disclosures to the enemy. In times of clear and present danger, the courts have held that even the privileged rights of the First Amendment must yield to the public's need for national security. For the facts of the matter are that this nation's foes have openly boasted of acquiring through our newspapers information they would otherwise hire agents to acquire through theft, bribery, or espionage. The details of this nation's covert preparations to counter the enemy's covert operations have been available to every newspaper reader, friend and foe alike. That the size, the strength, the location, and the nature of our forces and weapons, and our plans and strategy for their use, have all been pinpointed in the press and other news media to a degree sufficient to satisfy any foreign power. The newspapers which printed these stories were loyal, patriotic, responsible, and well-meaning. Had we been engaged in open warfare, they undoubtedly would not have published such items. But in the absence of open warfare, they recognized only the tests of journalism and not the tests of national security. And my question tonight is whether additional tests should not now be adopted. That question is for you alone to answer. No public official should answer it for you. No governmental plan should impose its restraints against your will. But I would be failing in my duty to the nation in considering all of the responsibilities that we now bear and all of the means at hand to meet those responsibilities if I did not commend this problem to your attention. It is the unprecedented nature of this challenge that also gives rise to your second obligation, and that is our obligation to inform and alert the American people, to make certain that they possess all the facts that they need and understand them as well, the perils, the prospects, the purposes of our program, and the choices that we face. No president should fear public scrutiny of his program, for from that scrutiny comes understanding, and from that understanding comes support or opposition, and both are necessary. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people. And it means, finally, that government at all levels must meet its obligation to provide you with the fullest possible information outside the narrowest limits. If the press is awaiting a declaration of war before it imposes the self-discipline of combat conditions, then I can only say that no war ever posed a greater threat to our security. Our way of life is under attack. Those who make themselves our enemy are advancing around the globe. The survival of our friends is in danger. And yet no war has been declared. No borders have been crossed by marching troops. No missiles have been fired. If you are awaiting a finding of clear and present danger, then I can only say that the danger has never been more clear, and its presence has never been more imminent. It requires a change in outlook, a change in tactics, a change in missions by the government, by the people, by every businessman or labor leader, and by every newspaper. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. Nevertheless, every democracy recognizes the necessary restraints of national security. And the question remains whether those restraints need to be more strictly observed if we are to oppose this kind of attack as well as outright invasion.